You are listening to CMQ Investing. I'm your host, Chris Franco. And in this episode, you're going to learn a counterintuitive, super simple way that you can do better than the average investor. To do that, you just need to do less than the average investor. Over a 30-year period, the average equity fund investor lagged the S&P 500's average annualized return by more than 3 percentage points. And I can say with almost total certainty that a big reason for this gap has to do with activity. The more you move, the more you tend to lose. In previous episodes, we've discussed some of the reasons why. What I want to focus on for this episode is a new reason that is particularly relevant to right now. And that is the tendency for investors to pull out their money when the market takes a sharp nosedive. According to a 2020 study by Dalbar, one major reason that investor returns are considerably lower than index returns has been the fact that many investors withdraw their investments during periods of market crises. Since 1984, approximately 70% of this underperformance occurred during only 10 key periods. All of these massive withdrawals took place after a severe market decline. During the aforementioned crises, many investors rejected the alternative of taking no action, even though the historical evidence is overwhelming that take no action is most often the best course. It reminds me of what Charlie Munger said about there being huge mathematical advantages to doing nothing. There's actually an episode of CMQ Investing with that very title. If you have not listened to it, I will include a link in the description, or if you just want to find it by browsing through the archives, you can do it that way. But it's definitely worth a listen, and the lesson in that episode completely changed the way that I looked at my overarching investment strategy. But getting back to this point here, activity is the enemy of the long-term investor. Countless studies show that investors who actively trade do worse than those who don't actively trade. One of the most cited studies about this topic notes the following: individual investors who hold common stocks directly pay a tremendous performance penalty for active trading. And the overarching message is this: trading is hazardous to your wealth. Another reason activity can hurt us is because when we are active or when we sell something, even if it's a winner, we have to realize our gains. As Robert Hagstrom noted in the Warren Buffett portfolio, the unrealized capital gain in your portfolio is yours to keep as long as you own the stock. By holding on to the gain, assuming the investment tenets behind owning the company have not changed, you are able to compound your net worth more forcefully. So if you can delay realizing your gains, you stand, mathematically speaking, to gain an advantage. Legendary investor Seth Klarman, who also wrote the book Margin of Safety, which I read from in a recent episode, noted that in a world in which most investors appear interested in figuring out how to make money every second and chase the idea of the day, there's also something validating about the message that it's okay to do nothing. That's lonely and contrary a lot of the time, but reminding yourself that that's what it takes is quite helpful. I want to leave us with some examples of how doing nothing can be advantageous in other fields. Let's begin within medicine. There is a concept called iatrogenic, and this refers to things like elective surgeries, where treatment or some sort of diagnostic procedure is done, but not necessarily essential. And sometimes doing something in these cases can lead to more complications for the patient, and in the worst case scenario, can cause death. How about in sports? According to my research, soccer penalty kicks, or for those of you who are not in the United States, football penalty kicks, illustrate the potential advantage that can be gained by doing nothing. According to my research, during penalty kicks, goalkeepers either dive towards their left or towards their right 94% of the time. However, if they had stayed at the center of the goal, their success rate would have been far greater. So why do the goalkeepers dive left or right 94% of the time? Well, according to what I uncovered here, goalkeepers say that they feel that they are at least making an effort when they dive left or right, whereas standing in the center and watching a goal be scored would feel much worse. Let's conclude with one more example here that ties everything together. Jack Bogle said that the principles that work in most aspects of our daily lives simply lead to failure in investing. Understanding that contrarian wisdom is the first step toward investment success. I hope you're able to do better as a long-term investor based on what we discussed in this episode, as well as in the more than 120 episodes of CMQ Investing that you can listen to absolutely free, whether it's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, iHeart, it goes on and on. Please make sure you follow or subscribe to the podcast. Check out Charlie Munger quotes and Warren Buffett videos on Instagram. Those accounts have a combined following of nearly 300,000. And thank you so much for listening. For CMQ Investing, my name is Chris Franco. We'll talk soon. Later.